She made millions smile as Lily from AT&T, but behind the commercials was a story of escape, heartbreak, and silent strength the world never saw. Hollywood knows many stories of sudden fame, but few begin with a baby carried across the world by desperate parents fleeing a broken homeland. Before she became the face America knew as Lily, Milana Vayntrub was a child of survival. Born in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, when it was still part of the Soviet Union, her first memories were not of red carpets or cameras, but of uncertainty. Her family, Jewish refugees seeking safety, packed what little they owned and left everything behind for a chance to breathe free air. They arrived in Los Angeles, exhausted, poor, and invisible. But her parents never let hardship harden them. Her mother worked endless hours, her father chased whatever jobs he could find, and Milana grew up in a cramped apartment filled with accents, laughter, and relentless hope. Later in life, she would say, "My parents worked there but's off to give me a good life." And they did, though that life came with lessons no child should have to learn. As she grew, television became her window to the world, and soon, her invitation inside it. Acting didn't start as a dream. It started as survival. Her parents needed money, and commercials were a way to help. At just 5 years old, Milana appeared on camera for the first time, a quiet girl with eyes that seemed to hide 1,000 untold stories. By the time she was 8, she had her first real break, a small but meaningful role as Tatiana Onyar. For most children, it would have been just another memory. For Milana, it was the beginning of something she couldn't yet name, the feeling of being seen. But fame didn't come fast. For years, she drifted between auditions, school, and the heavy silence that so often surrounds immigrant kids, that mix of gratitude and guilt, of wanting more but not daring to ask. Then came the decision that would change everything. At a time when most teenagers were worried about popularity, Milana quietly decided she wanted to tell stories, not just be in them. Her parents, practical as ever, worried. But for Milana, art wasn't rebellion, it was refuge. She was about to discover that the camera, like freedom, could be both a blessing and a curse. The bright lights of Hollywood rarely stay gentle for long. For Milana Vayntrub, the early spark of childhood fame faded into something quieter and heavier. After her small roles on ER and Days of Our Lives, the auditions slowed. She was no longer the cute little girl directors remembered. She was just another teenager in a city overflowing with dreams that almost never come true. And so, Milana stepped away, not in anger, not in defeat, but out of something deeper: exhaustion. She once admitted she thought she should focus on something more realistic. But reality, for Milana, had always been unpredictable. She tried to live a normal life, but the stage kept calling. ATUC San Diego. She wandered the halls feeling misplaced, until one day, she stumbled into a theater class. It was supposed to be just an elective. Instead, it became the thing that pulled her back to herself. Under the warm glow of stage lights, she remembered the rhythm of dialogue, the energy of a crowd, the feeling of stepping into someone else's world and finding her own in the process. From that moment, Milana didn't just act. She created. She wrote sketches, directed short pieces, joined improv groups, and studied the mechanics of storytelling. She was building something that didn't have a name yet, a career she could control. By her early 20s, she was hustling through Los Angeles once again, not as a child actor, but as a sharp, funny young woman carving her place in a brutal industry. She appeared in college humor sketches, small indie projects, and a blur of auditions that rarely paid the bills but always fed her purpose. Then, in 2013, a casting call changed her life. The role was simple: a cheerful sales rep for a cell phone company, the kind of gig actors take to pay rent. But when Milana stepped in front of the camera as Lily Adams for AT&T, something unexpected happened. Audiences loved her, not because of the product, but because she felt real. Warm, quick-witted, disarmingly human. In 30 seconds, she made millions of strangers smile. AT&T noticed. The commercial turned into a campaign. The campaign became a phenomenon, and suddenly, Milana Vayntrub, The refugee kid who once thought she'd never make it was one of the most recognizable faces in America. Yet behind every smile on screen, there was a woman quietly wondering if she was losing herself again, trapped by the same fame she once ran from. When the world saw Lily Adams, they saw charm. When Milana looked in the mirror, she saw the cost. At first, the commercials felt harmless, funny little sketches that paid the bills and let her keep working with people she liked. But as the campaign grew, so did the obsession. Fans began to blur the line between character and person, between admiration and invasion. And for a woman who had spent her life fighting to define herself, that blur became suffocating. The internet, with all its power to lift someone up, also knows how to crush. Milana found herself the target of countless comments, some flattering, most intrusive, many cruel. People stopped talking about her talent and started dissecting her body, her outfits, her angles. In 2020, the noise became unbearable. She went live on Instagram to tell the truth, her truth. Her voice was calm, but the pain was unmistakable. She said, "All of these comments, it hurts my feelings. I'm hurting." The words hung heavy. The actress who made the nation laugh was finally showing the world her tears. But Milana didn't retreat quietly. Instead, she took back the power. When she returned to direct her own AT&T commercials, she made one subtle but powerful decision. She chose how she'd be framed on camera. Not as an object, not as a meme, but as a woman in control of her image. Later, she explained it on Twitter. "I direct the ads. I place myself like that because of the thousands of unwelcome comments I receive. You've lost the privilege of looking at me until I feel safe again." Those words were more than a statement. They were a line in the sand. Milana had learned that fame can be both a gift and a cage. But now, she wasn't asking for permission to speak. She was demanding respect. And the woman who once feared she'd never make it in Hollywood was now rewriting the rules of how women are seen within it. Long before she was defending herself from strangers online, Milana Vayntrub had been fighting for people the world often ignores. Her empathy, born from her own childhood as a refugee, became her compass. When the Syrian refugee crisis erupted, most people only saw headlines. Milana saw herself, a child crossing borders, searching for safety. In 2016, she traveled to Greece, where thousands of displaced families were stranded in refugee camps. What she witnessed there changed her life. The cold tents, the hungry children, the hopelessness in the air, it all felt too familiar. She couldn't just walk away. When she returned home, she launched a campaign she called "Can't Do Nothing." It wasn't a slogan, it was her truth. Even if it's just hugging someone or changing diapers, she said, "I can do that. I have to." Through her platform, she raised awareness, funds, and hope. The woman once seen as a smiling phone salesperson had become a global advocate for humanity. And in the process, she rediscovered the part of herself that fame had almost buried, the storyteller who wanted to change the world, not just entertain it. Her activism wasn't performative. It was personal, because every time she stood up for someone else, she was also standing up for the little girl who once fled a collapsing empire with her family. It wasn't long before Hollywood took notice of a new Milana, one who was fearless, funny, and fiercely compassionate. Roles followed, including her appearances in the hit series This Is Us, and her voice work as Squirrel Girl in Marvel's Rising films. Each project carried a familiar undercurrent: humor with heart, courage beneath fragility, strength wrapped in warmth. Milana was proving something powerful, that kindness and resilience can be just as magnetic as fame. And behind every performance, behind every line, there was still that quiet conviction that if she couldn't change everything, she'd change something. For years, Milana Vayntrub's story was told by others, the commercials, the headlines, the internet chatter. But today, she's the one holding the pen. After conquering the commercial world, redefining her image, and reclaiming her voice, Milana began embracing a new chapter, one not about fame, but fulfillment. In 2021, she quietly became a mother. It wasn't a public announcement or a glossy magazine spread. Instead, she revealed it later in an essay. sharing the truth with the same openness that had defined her life. Her son was healthy, but the labor had been grueling, a test of strength that mirrored her entire journey. Through motherhood, Milana found clarity. She'd built a career on empathy, but now she was living it every day: sleepless nights, quiet mornings, the weight of love and responsibility intertwined. She also opened up about having had an abortion years earlier, not as confession, but as conviction. In her words, both experiences taught her the same lesson: that every woman deserves the right to choose her own path. That honesty, that bravery, made her more than an actress. It made her a voice for millions who rarely feel heard. Her recent years have been quieter, more selective, appearing in projects like Werewolves Within, writing, directing, and continuing her advocacy for women, refugees, and mental health awareness. But even in her silence, her influence lingers. Because Milana Vayntrub's story isn't just about an actress who made people laugh in a commercial. It's about a woman who turned every wound into wisdom, a refugee who found her power through art, and a survivor who learned that kindness is its own kind of rebellion. In a world obsessed with fame, Milana chose something rarer: authenticity. She may always be remembered as Lily from AT&T, but those who've looked deeper know the truth: that behind the smile was a fighter, behind the camera, a creator, and beneath it all, a heart that refused to stop caring. Milana Vayntrub didn't just become a star. She became a story, one of resilience, compassion,